Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today I got a quick tutorial. It's a viewer's request on how to set up your switches in BetaFlight as well as on the controller to set your modes up correctly. As always, I'm Jeff with TitanFPV. Let's dive in. First order of business, guys, if you're not already subscribed, please do so. Click that notification bell and you'll be notified when I upload all content like this to the channel. All right, for the first part of our tutorial, we're going to be using the jumper Bumblebee. We're going to set up our switches on the radio. Then we'll head over to the computer in BetaFlight to finish up the process. So we're going to create a new model. I'm not going to name this one. You can if you want. We're going to page over to the Inputs tab. This is where you can check your channel order. The Bumblebee is AETR. If you're using something like a Tango, it's probably TAER. You want to make sure that that is correct and matches what you have set up in BetaFlight. We'll page over again to the Mixes tab. This is where we're going to add our switches. So the aux1 or the first open channel 5 is where we're going to set up our arm. You don't have to name these. I do in case you want to reference something later on, but it's just easy to remember. All right. And we'll choose our switch. Now, in the tutorial, I had a logical switch set up with these two for arm, but most people are going to use something like a single 2-position switch, and that's what we'll do in this tutorial. So we'll select our source, and we're going to click this 2-position. So now that's set to switch SE. We'll back out of that. And we're going to go down to the next aux, which is channel 6 or aux2. I like to set up my buzzer on that switch, so we'll call that buzzer. And then we're going to choose the source. I like to use this one, this 2-position as well. So that's switch SF. We're going to back out of that. And then for our third aux channel, or channel 7, we're going to set this as the flight modes tab, or switch rather. And I like to use a 3-position for the modes tab. So for the source, we'll hit this switch, which is SA. And for the final aux, which is 4 or channel 8, we're going to use or set this as turtle mode. Also called flip over after crash. The source, I use this 3-position, but midway. So switch SB for turtle mode. And that's it, folks, for the transmitter side of this tutorial. So first, once you've got your receiver wired up, you're going to want to make sure that you have it set to the correct port. We're using BetaFlight 4.5.1. It should be pretty similar, just depending on what version you're on. I'm using an external receiver, so we're going to set it up on Serial RX. And I've got it set to UART6. This needs to match if you want the receiver to communicate with the drone correctly. If you have everything wired up correctly, you have it bound to your transmitter, but for some reason you're not getting the stick inputs. It could be potentially because you don't have it set up on the correct UART. We're using UART 6. You want to make sure that's going to be dependent on whatever you have yours connected to. We'll save that. Then we're going to jump into the receiver tab. And this is where you can see that your stick movements are actually working. Now, I'm using an ExpressLRS receiver, so it's going to be serial via UART. Now, if you have an SPI receiver, it's built in. You could have a flight controller with a built-in SPI receiver. If you're using, I don't know, like on a wing or something you want to use PWM. But there's different ways to connect them. We're using serial is the short of it. Now the protocol for ExpressLRS is going to be CRSF, so Crossfire. That's selected correctly there. I do have telemetry enabled. And the other thing you're going to want to make sure is, depending on your transmitter, you want to make sure that the channel order is correct, or the channel map. You can change this. You can use the drop down, but mine is AETR, as you can tell. Things like the Tango, Tango 2, I think is TAER. But you want to make sure that that's matching as well. So if your quad over here in the picture is rotating out of control with no stick inputs, it's probably because you have the channel map set incorrectly. So make sure that's connected correctly there. I don't set endpoints. I never had any issues. Somebody wants to tell me the benefit of that, if it's really going to make a dramatic change in my flying abilities or the way my craft behaves, let me know down in the comments. I don't do it. Never had an issue. Once this is all set correctly there, as you see, the quad is doing what I am telling it to do. So looks like it's moving correctly here. Everything looks like it's working correctly. Now we're going to dive into the modes tab and set up our switches here. You can use whatever switch you'd like, but this is how I do mine. For the arm, we're going to have to add a range. This is what's good about BetaFlight, and they've been able to do this for a long time. It can automatically detect what channel. You don't have to select this yourself. Have it on auto here. Arm. And as you see, it's on aux 1, which is right? It's the 5th channel. And that's typically, if you're flying a quad, what it's going to be set to. It's a 2-position switch that you use for arm, but you want it to be at the upper end of the range here. So it needs to be in here. So when you arm it, it'll only arm it when it's in this position, and then disarmed is going to be the low position. That's where you see here. I have arms set up. We're going to set up buzzer or the beeper. You're going to add range, and then I'm going to use this switch. Buzzer. Once again, it's a 2-position switch, so I'll just set it to the upper end of the range, and then when the beeper is not engaged, it'll go to the lower end. The other one that I use quite frequently is the flip over after crash or turtle mode, and then we'll add a range for this one. And I'm using a 3-position for this, so it's actually I use it in the middle position. This is where I want it. Typically this would be the low end, this would be midpoint, and this would be the upper end of the range, but I use the midpoint on one of my 3-position switches. You could potentially use the 2-position switch if you'd like as well. And then finally, for some reason, I do include all the modes. Typically I only fly acro, but you may want to use angle or horizon mode. If you lose signal and you want the quad to automatically level itself out, you can flip over to one of these, or if you're handing your controller over to a new flyer, it may be beneficial to give them those options. We'll set these up here. I just have them set this way by default. So I use another 3-position switch, and I have angle set up on the low end, so it defaults in angle mode. And then, which I should probably set that to mid-range, so it would be acro out of the box. I don't think I typically do that, but anyway. But we're going to use these all on the same switch or the same channel, right? Because it's a 3-position, and typically you have 3 different flight modes, or I use 3 different flight modes. we're just going to hit the switch again. And mid-range is horizon mode. And acro, you won't actually see on here, but when it's in the high position, that's going to be acro or manual mode. Let's go ahead and reverse these up. We're going to move these up one, and that way it's going to start off in manual or acro mode. So that's how I set my switches up. And then we're going to hit save. If you're having problems distinguishing which mode you're in, you can set up your modes in your OSD. I like to put mine in the bottom right hand corner. Like here it's showing that I'm in angle mode. The other one is horizon mode as well as acro mode. But if you have air mode enabled, which most of us do, it'll set up to show us air mode. So that's acro mode pretty much. But yeah, that's an easy pro tip if you're having trouble distinguishing what mode you're in. You can add that to the OSD. Viewer request for what my rates are. I'm going to show you those. And it doesn't matter if I'm flying freestyle on a 5-inch or a tiny whoop. These are the rates that I consistently use. All right, and that's it for this simple tutorial. We're not lining our radio up in this tutorial. This is just about setting up switches on our radio and in BetaFlight. Hopefully it was informative for you guys. Remember, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and do that. Click that notification bell. I got a lot more content coming your way. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.